Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Travis back with another episode of the Rep by Rep Strength Podcast. So, today I'm on a long drive right now, so I've got plenty of time to let my thoughts on training from the week kind of empty out here. So, there's a handful of people that I've been working with for the better part of 7 years now. And, it started out, working with them in person, and then, working with a couple of them in person, and then the other few, it was kind of this hybrid mix of, they would work with me virtually, and then occasionally come in and work with me in person. And then there was another one or two that have pretty much been exclusively virtual this whole time. So, a couple factors that I take into consideration when I start working with people is, number one, what's their injury history like? Number two, what's their biological age? Number three, what's their training age? And biological age and training age are completely different, because even though somebody may be 30 years old, that's their biological age, but they've never trained before, they have a training age of 0. So that would be the type of training that I would put together for that individual would be vastly different than someone who's 25, but they've been lifting weights since they were 15, for example. They effectively have a training age of 10 years underneath their belt. So anyway, those are some differences there. Another factor I'll look at is just something called anthropometrics. So we look at limb length, and while I'm looking at limb length, I'll also consider flexibility and mobility and how that plays into their capability to perform a certain movement. Also keeping in mind that there are no magic exercises that you must do in the weight room. It's highly dependent on the factors I just laid out. But as an example, everybody thinks you have to barbell back squat. Yeah, barbell back squatting is fun. It's one of my favorite lifts. But if I'm working with a guy who's 6'6" and has super stiff ankles and a bad left shoulder, a barbell back squat's probably not the best exercise for him. Maybe a better choice, as an example, would be a front foot elevated dumbbell split squat. He can still get that deep hip angle. He can load it a little bit more appropriately with the bad shoulder, and we can work on single leg strength as well. So, there are a lot of different exercises we can swap in and out as long as we're hitting the movement patterns that we want to hit. So movement patterns I'll look at will be squatting, deadlifting, pushing and pulling, which will be broken down into vertical and horizontal components. Then some type of carry. And the deadlift and squat, variations of those. Variations of the pushing and pulling. There is no magical piece of equipment that we have to use. So from there, we'll look at, well, how many days a week can you consistently train? And a lot of people will say, I want to train 5 days a week. It's like, no. What's the likelihood of you consistently sticking to that? A better option would be to start with fewer training sessions, working really, really hard, and focusing on getting 3 sessions every 7 days, as opposed to setting yourself up for failure when you say, well, I want to get 5 training sessions in 7 days. Life is probably just going to happen, and you're probably going to miss a session or 2 throughout the week. Something is going to come up, and then you'll start beating yourself up and saying, oh, well, I failed at this. Oh man, I'm down. Well, what's the point of doing the remaining 3 sessions? And then people will just go down that rabbit hole. And it's better to be in a position of, okay, cool, I've got my 3 sessions knocked out for the week. Now I have the option to do an additional day because I've got my main work done. So, just to give you a couple examples of some of these folks that I've worked with remotely and the success that they've had. So, the first guy, he would work overseas for about a month at a time. So, he would be gone for a month, and then he would be back for anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, kind of depending on his work schedule and requirements, because they might call him back out to the field. He might just have to pick up and go. So we had to be, and he essentially had a training age of 0 to maybe 1 year, and we started off with just learning the basic lifts. So when he was home, we would learn and practice basic lifts, basic barbell lifts, which would be, I think we started with goblet squatting, and then slowly over time that evolved into front squatting, which evolved into back squatting. And then we worked some sort of hinge pattern, rather as a trap bar deadlift when he first started. And then that slowly moved into straight bar barbell deadlifts. Then overhead presses started with dumbbells. Dumbbell bench press started with light dumbbells. And then slowly over time we worked this into heavier and heavier lifting, done more frequent with heavier stimulus each and every time. So especially when he was home, we'd hit it really hard. And then when he was gone, whatever time he had available, he would get in short workouts that were done with, oftentimes he just had some bands. That's all he was able to take with him. So we'd have to get creative about, okay, what kind of work can we get done that looks similar to the lifts that you're going to practice when you get back, done with bands. So he would do a lot of band work, and then when he had come back, do a lot of barbell work. So over the course of time, his lifting evolved from very, very simple basic lifts, which is oftentimes best anyway, into slightly more complex exercises with more creative loading variations. So when he first started, for example, I can't remember at this point, but it was something along the lines of 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, and then it became, okay, we're going to do 3-2-1 waves, and then we'll do some ratchet type loading. We'll do some things with bands and chains once he got into like year 4, year 5. So we were able to be very creative once he had the base built up. Once he had that base built up, then he could tolerate higher and higher amounts of training. So that worked very, very well for him. And then last couple years it had been exclusively remote work, because he got a job, moved to a different state, and then I got a job and moved to a different state as well. But we were still able to work together with pretty good success, and to the point where he's learned enough during his time in working with me that he's able to make appropriate training decisions for himself. And then he'll just shoot me a text here and there, or we'll talk if he's having trouble with anything, and then he'll just take care of himself at this point. So that's what I love, is teaching people how to make appropriate training decisions so that they can take care of themselves for the rest of their life, and then reach out to me anytime. So that's the first example. The second example is a lady I've worked with, I think close to 7 years now, and she had trained with a couple different folks here and there, and most of my training, like I will have people use machines, cables, all sorts of different implements as needed, but for the most part I will try to find a way to do ground-based work with free weights for most people. And then all that will change is going to be the type of loading, the range of motion potentially, the complexity of the exercise, the speed of the exercise, because again, that the lifts should move from slow to fast over time. They should move from simple to more complex over time. And then we can also increase the frequency and deal with more sophisticated loading variations over time. Anyway, this lady is an ER doctor, and she has a very stressful schedule, much like the guy that I just mentioned. And I think between the two of them, I think in the course of 6-7 years, whatever it is at this point, they might have missed together. They might have missed 3 training sessions. Their compliance rate for sticking with their training is out of this world. Now, don't be confused here. There were certainly times where both of them, for different reasons, were not feeling 100%. They were not feeling like training. But they still came into the weight room, and we just adjusted how much we were doing for the day. We adjusted the intensity for the day, and then spent the rest of the day recovering. So either way, they still got some sort of work in. They didn't make excuses. They have discipline over motivation. What that means is they have these built-in disciplines into their lives to where their health is a priority for them as a form of preventative medicine that they take so seriously that they will not miss sessions. The only time they've missed sessions, again, I think it was three times, was they were, feeling absolutely terrible, like flu-level symptoms at some point, So anyway, this lady, she had worked with a few different folks here and there, and they hadn't pushed free weight exercises as much as I do. And we introduced free weight movements slowly but surely, and her results were better and better and better because she responded in a positive way to free weight exercises. And then we adjusted the frequency, adjusted the loading, and she's got a full setup in one room of her house now, because it worked better for her to just communicate with me remotely, where she'll send over videos of her performing a lift, and I'll break it down, send her some feedback back, and then she'll know what to do for next time. So she has her gym right there, so she will wake up, go right downstairs in the gym, get warmed up, and go. And that is just her daily routine. Now, here's the thing, is she does not lift light weights. She will do some light supplementary work here and there after her main lifts, but we will sequence and cycle heavy lifting into her training. And to my knowledge, she's never felt better. She's probably the strongest she's ever been, probably the leanest she's ever been, because we implement appropriate doses of heavy training on a regular basis. As an example of this, she just finished up a 12-week block, and will sometimes peak out her 12-week or 8 or 12-week block, kind of wherever we're at, just to see what went well, what did not work out too well for you, what adjustments do we need to make, etc. And we peaked out this block, and she back squatted, I think we finished 205 or 210 on a back squat for a single. And this was the heaviest she had lifted with the best technique and depth she's ever performed a back squat with. Because that's been something we've been looking at. It's not just loading, like not just how heavy can you lift, but what's the technique look like? How are we breaking that down? So her technique is vastly different from over the course of the past year or 2 years. So she continued to work on ankle mobility and getting her calves loosened up and all of this stuff, and doing a lot of pause work. So as a result, her back squat peaked out at 205, 210, somewhere along there. And I have a feeling that when we go over her next 12-week block, she is probably going to hit another PR, because part of training is the frequency that you must do things in order to not just retain but also develop the skill and have the confidence to know I can do X number of pounds for X number of reps, and then you just flat out need to practice it. Anyway, bench press got to, I believe, 145, 140, 145, and then her deadlift finished out right around 315. I think she hit 320 and then missed 325. So I say these numbers because she has made a hell of a lot of progress. I would have to go back in the records and look to see just how much progress we're talking about, but she is fairly petite. She works a stressful schedule, but she makes time in her schedule for training. So, just wanted to outline or highlight a couple client success stories there of people who have worked very, very hard and continue to work very hard and built this into their life. And it's now a part of, again, preventative medicine for them. So when you start investing in your health like this in terms of training, other areas you're likely going to make better decisions as well, because you start to understand the implications of long-term health decisions that you're making right now and how that impacts your future self. So you start, in all likelihood, making better food choices. You start making better choices in terms of what are you drinking? Are you drinking alcohol? Are you drinking regular Coke? Are you drinking enough water? Things of that nature. Okay, now we've got that under control. We've got training, food, fluid under control. What's your sleep look like? What's your stress level look like? How do we manage that stress? How do we manage your training while under stress? All of those things start to come into play, and we start to get a better understanding of that, and now we can have better success long term. So anyway, if you guys have questions about any of this, please let me know. Email me at jtbarrettfitness@gmail.com. Also, make sure you sign up for my weekly newsletter at travisbarrett.com/email. And if you'd like to schedule a free call, do that at travisbarrett.com/call. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. All right, have a good rest of your day.